Shana Tova, everyone. For years, at our family Seder, my father would ask for nominees for the Shifra and Pua Award for women who had done exemplary, brave things. And every year, my grandmother would nominate Hillary Clinton. Although there was one year when she didn't, and we all looked at her and said, "No, Hillary Clinton." She said, "Not this year, I'm mad at her." But the following year, when looking for nominees, Hillary was nominated once again. My grandmother loved Hillary Clinton. So on election day in 2016, I put on my grandmother's necklace, piled my kids into the car, and drove to our polling place. I explained to my kids that I was casting my vote not just for myself, but for my grandmother as well. I explained we were making history, shattering the glass ceiling. And so we took a selfie to mark the moment and posted it on Facebook. On election day 2016, my dear friend Tricia went to her polling place to cast her vote. As she exited the poll, she was handed a little slip of paper with a number on it representing that she was the 122nd person to have voted at her polling place that day. When she was done, she too took a selfie and posted it on Facebook. Her caption, "I'm person number 122 in the basket of deplorables. Hillary Clinton, you're going down." Tricia and I have been dear friends for almost 30 years. On the surface, it may look like we have nothing in common and that we couldn't hold a civil conversation. She is a staunch conservative Republican, and I am a liberal Democrat. When Ruth Bader Ginsburg died on Friday, I noticed that Tricia and her family were in Washington, D.C., and she posted a picture on Facebook near a makeshift memorial. She commented what a loss it was that Ruth Bader Ginsburg had died. I admit Tricia's post caught me a bit off guard, so I texted her to get her thoughts, and here's what she had to say. The notorious RBG. I admired her personally and professionally. I think she was a powerhouse, and her loss will be palpable for a long time. How can you not root for that tiny woman who took on so much for so long? Tricia's text went on to highlight 3 ways in which Ruth Bader Ginsburg lived her life that should be a model for all of us. These ideas are not new ideas. In fact, they're very Jewish ideas that date back generations, thousands of years. I would venture to say that these ideas are universal ideas that probably require that we take a refresher class in them from time to time. Life lesson number 1. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was one of the last stalwarts of the ability to argue civically and have civil discourse no matter how diametrically opposed she could be from the other person. This was evident in her relationship with Antonin Scalia. The time has come for civil discourse. No matter what side of the aisle you're on, the lack of civility we are experiencing with politicians and their supporters, and even just between average Americans, it's ugly, it's disturbing. Rabbi Stephen Gutto, a visiting scholar at NYU's Robert F. Wagner Graduate School of Public Service and co-director of the Religious Leadership and Civic Engagement, puts it this way. Democracy is messy, and American politics have always been hard fought. But for some time now, the fight is not just hard, it's been ugly. The art of listening has been jettisoned in the rush to be heard as we amplify our voices through name-calling, mudslinging, and fabrication. I once heard a speaker at a preschool conference. When she talked about each age group, she literally acted as if she was the age of the children she was discussing. When she got to the 4-year-old, she took a deep breath. 4s are tough, she said. They carry the sword of language in their belts and use it in painful ways. I'm not your friend. I hate you. Language has long been used as a weapon. The Midrash states, why does Scripture liken the evil tongue to an arrow rather than any other weapon? All other weapons strike at close quarters, while the arrow flies from afar. Likewise, Lashon Hara, the evil tongue, what is said in Rome can kill in Syria. I don't know about you, but I am tired of listening to politicians who spend their time focusing on why their opponent is a bad person, rather than talking about the very important issues that face our country and the world. The level of partisanship is overwhelming, and it feels like no one is willing to cross party lines, to listen, or to work together. It's okay to disagree. Disagreement actually makes the conversation far more interesting. But if we are not in conversation, if we stop listening to one another, how do we even start to find common ground? In the Talmud, there are two schools of thought that often debate one another, the school of Hillel and the school of Shammai. The Talmud says for 3 years they disputed one another, each asserting the law is according to our view. Then a divine voice called out and said, you're both right, but everyone is going to follow the law according to the school of Hillel. If both are right, why do we follow Hillel? The Talmud tells us that we follow Hillel not because their opinions were more correct, but because they showed more civility and respect for their opponent's point of view. So maybe as Americans, we should start judging our leaders on their character and on their respectfulness of others. From the book of Zechariah, we are told, love ye truth, but also peace. We can see the truth and seek the truth, but first we must learn to live at peace with respect for one another. And this can be achieved through civil discourse. Life lesson number 2. What matters is what we do with our time here on earth. Our purpose is to serve others, not ourselves. Love the stranger, pursue justice, and care for the poor. These are the values that have shaped us as a Jewish people. And we are able to do this work, but not for any glory for our own names. We do this work to make the world a more just place to live. From the book of Isaiah, we are taught, learn to do good, devote yourselves to justice, aid the wronged, uphold the rights of the orphan, defend the cause of the widow. The Talmud reminds us that we are to help non-Jewish poor and sick in addition to Jewish poor and sick. And we are to engage in gimilut chasadim, acts of loving kindness. For the whole Torah rests on 3 things, al haTorah, al ha'avodah, ve'al gimilut chasadim, on Torah, on prayer, and on loving kindness. So how are we supposed to do this work? Humbly. As we are taught in the book of Micah, we are to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. During the course of this upcoming year, Makom will have several opportunities where we can go and help those in need. I hope you will join me in helping others. Life lesson number 3. We need to get back to seeing people and loving them for who they are. In the book of Genesis, we are told, God created human beings in the divine image, creating them in the image of God, B'Tselem Elohim. There's a line in the musical Les Mis, to love another person is to see the face of God. What if we turned that around just a little bit to say that when we look into one another's faces, we recognize that we are all created in the image of God? How can we not treat one another with respect, with dignity, with kindness, when we know that we are looking at the image of God? When I created Makom 3 years ago, I chose the name Makom because it had a dual meaning. It can mean place, and it can be another name for God. I wanted to create a community that would be a place where we would recognize the God-like qualities in each and every person and accept everyone for who they are. There's a Talmudic story that a certain non-Jew came before Shammai and said to him, "I will convert to Judaism on one condition, that you teach me the entire Torah while I stand on 1 foot." Shammai chased him away with the builder's tool that was in his hand. Then the same man came before Hillel and said, "Convert me, teach me the whole Torah while I stand on 1 foot." Hillel said, "What is hateful to you, do not do to others. That is the whole Torah. The rest is commentary. Go and learn it." What if that was a starting point for every conversation? What is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbor. The Torah says, "Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha." It's 3 words in Hebrew, a bit more in English. Love your neighbor as yourself. Rabbi Akiva identified this as the most important principle in the Torah. If you were going to pick one phrase to guide your year, you would not go wrong with "Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha," love your neighbor as yourself. Imagine how these 3 little words could change the world if we all took them as a call to action. There are some people in this world who have no interest in having us love our neighbor as ourselves. They encourage others to hate those who are different, hate those who hold other beliefs. What they're doing is in their own self-interest. They do not have our best interests at heart at all. We need to tune them out. Now is the time to put our differences aside and to treat one another as we wish to be treated ourselves, to see the humanity in each and every person so that we can start to speak to one another with kindness. Shortly after my friend Trisha and I met, we made an agreement that we would not talk about politics. But this has never stopped us from having meaningful conversations about issues. And even though we approach the issues very differently, our core values are similar, and we are often able to find some common ground. Trisha has long served as my Republican sermon advisor, helping to make sure that my sermons don't get too political, but that they stay focused on the Jewish approach to an issue. I have never tried to change Trisha's mind, and she has never tried to change mine. At the end of the day, the love, admiration, and friendship that we share is more important than politics. As we begin this new year of 5,781, may we commit ourselves to learning these important life lessons: the lesson of civil discourse, the lesson of helping others, and the lesson of loving people for who they are. May this year be a year when the olive branch is extended across the party lines, so that we can begin to work in nonpartisan ways to move our country forward. May we recognize that we are all created in God's image as holy, sacred vessels, and may we treat one another with kindness, making this world a gentler, easier place in which to live. Shana Tova. I wish each of you a happy, healthy, sweet, kind, peaceful New Year.